Hello, hope everyone's doing well, and welcome back to Warship Wednesday. Today's subject is Suffren, the French cruiser. Now, she was laid down in April 1926 and launched in May of next year as the name ship of a cruiser class, Suffren. Her name comes from the French admiral Pierre-André de Suffren, who was a French noble who went on to become a very successful admiral under Louis XV, harassing the British a lot. Some historians compare him as the French equivalent of Horatio Nelson, so pretty big guy. A common French thing was to name their ships after important people from their history. So her class would be a slight improvement over the preceding class of Dunkirk cruisers, with a slightly raised bridge for herself, two scout plane catapults mounted towards the rear, but right before the aft funnel, with a slightly longer hull than the Dunkersks, but her armament would remain the same with 4 mounts of twin 8-inch guns. So her classification ended up changing after the London Naval Treaty. So the French referred to her as a light cruiser, but after the London Naval Treaty, that okay, 8-inch guns, that's heavy cruiser territory. So she was referred to as a first class cruiser, or as we'd otherwise refer to as a heavy cruiser. So for her history, she spent most of her time patrolling the Mediterranean until 1939, where she was dispatched to keep eyes on the French possessions in Indochina. After the war broke out with Germany, she patrolled the South China Sea looking for German merchantmen until 1939, when she began escorting convoys around in the Indian Ocean, particularly from Singapore to Ceylon. And in May 1940, she joined with other members of the French Navy in Alexandria as part of Force X, which later sailed to Beirut, which is now Lebanon. And the force spent some time around there, and they patrolled off the coast of Crete because they heard some reports of Italian activity in the area, but they didn't find anything, so they ended up returning back to Alexandria. After the fall of France, the Admiral of Force X agreed to demilitarize the vessels and leave them waiting in port in agreement with the British who were there. The British said, hey, you can either demilitarize, have them go elsewhere, or scuttle them in place. So the admiral said, okay, we'll just demilitarize them, leave them here. And so they sat there until May of 1943, when Suffren and the rest of Force X joined the Allies as part of the Free French Navy, and ended up sailing all the way through the Suez Canal, around the Cape of Good Hope, so all the way around Africa, to Dakar in North Africa, and she ended up serving this area for the rest of World War II. She underwent a refit, so she got a little bit of upgrade. And after the war, she went to French Indochina, which was having its bit of rebellion, which led on to the Vietnam War. And then she served there until about 1947, where she was placed in reserve, and later became a target for a sonar school in 1961. And then her name was changed to Ocean, so a new guided missile frigate could be the 7th vessel to bear the name Suffren. And then she would later be stricken from the Naval Registry in 1972, being put up for sale in 1975, and finally scrapped in Italy in 1976. And that brings the end to the career of Suffren. Now, as for her skills, the first skill, Admiral Satan, or Satan, that was a pretty easy one to figure out. That was a nickname given to her namesake, so he was nicknamed Admiral Satan, probably because he was harassing the hell out of the British. And the further skill just has to do with she's the Irish Knight, makes sense. And for quotes, she references her and her sisters all being slight variations, but they're all still the Suffren class, so Suffren's a bit different from Falk and all that stuff. And then her idle one line, so when she's on the secondary screen, she talks about preferring hammocks to beds, and she also mentions later in one of her oath lines. But I couldn't find the exact reference of what this is referring to, but I feel like there definitely is something there. If you know it, leave in the comments so I can find out and other people can find out too. I don't know if it's like the French were a big fan of hammocks during that time period. And then her special touch line, so when you be a little inappropriate, he talks about being weird, and she's like, oh, I thought I was the same size as Falk. And then this is referring to Falk's physical dimensions being slightly larger than Suffren's. So as she was talking about earlier, they're all slightly different, and Falk's was a little bit bigger. And then her stranger line, she talks about being a big sister figure. This is a common occurrence among Azur lane ships, with the eldest ship or the named ship being more of a elder sisterly figure and having that kind of personality towards the rest of the ships and towards the commander. So that was Suffren. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you found it useful. And I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.